Hello students and welcome to Estructuras Comparadas del Inglés y el Español, Contrasting Analysis. In this first meeting, in this first encounter, we shall be dealing with gender, which is quite problematic. Not from the sense of understanding what gender in fact is, because I think everyone knows what gender is. Male, female, which are the commonest ones, but from the interpretative point of view. That is, when we translators have to take a chance to decide in favor of one gender or the other, especially when ambiguity comes up. And this is quite important. In general, when we talk about gender, we associate it only with nouns. But what about adjectives? That is, qualifiers, determiners, pronouns. In this first unit, we're going to deal with gender in all these grammatical categories. What about the difference between adjectives, determiners, and pronouns? Adjectives always have a qualifying function. That is, they always uh, are qualifiers of a noun. For example, beautiful, big, small, large, short, long. What about determiners? Determiners are those categories, grammatical categories, which always premodify a noun, denoting distance, possession, quantity. For example, we have demonstrative determiners. These, that, these, those. This book. This premodifies a noun and denotes distance. Or those books. Those premodifies the noun books and also denotes distance. Demonstrative determiners denote distance. What about possessives? As the name indicates, they always denote possession. My name, the possessive determiner, premodifies the noun my name and denotes possession. Or for example, our school. Our possessive determiner premodifies the noun school and also denotes possession. And quantifiers, or as they are also called, quantifying determiners, denote quantity. Some people, many days, they always premodify a noun and they denote quantity. Many, some, few, etc. What about pronouns? Pronouns always have a referential position. They always act as reference. For example, he, they, personal pronouns, mine, yours, possessive, this, that, look at this, look at those, demonstrative, indefinite, everyone, everything, no one, reflexive pronouns or self pronouns, myself, they, themselves, herself, etc. So, nouns, adjectives, determiners, and pronouns. In English, gender, either related to nouns, adjectives, determiners, or pronouns, is always associated to biological sex. What does this mean? That is, a noun is male or female gendered, depending whether this particular noun, adjective, determiner, or pronoun is defined in relation to he or she pronouns. Remember that the only pronouns in English that are gender biased are he or she. He denoting male gender, she female gender. That is biologically sex gendered words. For example, if I say chair, chair is a female gendered noun because it is associated with she. Or, for example, picture is a male biologically sex gendered noun because it is associated with he. But in Spanish, the panorama is completely different. Siempre nos han dicho que en español los términos que terminan en o siempre son masculinos. Libro, ropero, cuadro, y los que terminaban en a eran femeninos. Female gendered. Casa, mesa, montaña, puerta. But what about these other ones? Sofá. Termina en a y sin embargo es male gendered. O mano termina en o y sin embargo es female gendered. O, fíjense en estos otros, ¿qué pasa con café, con calle, con lápiz? No terminan ni en o, café, lápiz, ni en a, calle, y sin embargo tienen género masculino o femenino. ¿Qué pasa en español? En español el gender no viene dado por asociación biológica. That is, in Spanish, gender is not biologically sex determined. But, on the contrary, in Spanish, gender is given arbitrarily by dictionaries. So, always remember this. In English, gender is always biologically sex determined. Whereas in Spanish, gender is always arbitrarily given by dictionaries. Let's see a classification now of genders in English and in Spanish. In English, we have male gender. And this male gender may be either morphologically marked with a suffix, and this suffix is generally man, policeman, businessman, postman, fireman, or even morphologically unmarked, that is, nouns which are not followed by a suffix as the previous ones. For example, father, boy, bull, king. Then we have the female gendered nouns, and as the male gendered nouns, this kind of gender may be either morphologically marked with the suffix s, woman, and others, lioness, policewoman, or even morphologically unmarked, ant, mother, queen, cow. In English, we also have the so-called common or dual gender. And what are common or dual gendered nouns? They are those nouns having both genders at the same time. That is, there is no distinction between gender, and these kinds of nouns may be female or male nouns according to the context they are inserted. For example, nouns having common or dual gender are lawyer, doctor, baby, canary, whale. And then we have neuter gender. Neuter gender in English is always and only, always and only associated with inanimate objects. Table, Spain, river, tree. What happens in Spanish? In Spanish, we also have male gender nouns, either morphologically marked gender, for example, with the suffix o, abogado, panadero, tío, cuadro, or even un, uh, morphologically unmarked gender nouns, rey, león, jugador, lápiz. And what about female gender? We also have morphologically marked gendered nouns with the suffix a, denoting female gender. The suffix a denotes female gender, the suffix o, male gender. Leona, abogada, reina, doctora, manzana. But we also have unmarked or morphologically unmarked female gendered nouns. Pared, televisión, nube, actriz. And something important uh, to stress here is what happens with cuadro, lápiz, manzana, pared, televisión, nube. The panorama here is quite different. In English, these objects always have neuter gender. They are neuter gendered nouns. But in Spanish, neuter gender doesn't exist. Remember that in English, gender is always biologically sex determined. In Spanish, gender is arbitrarily given by dictionaries. So, in Spanish, objects have either male gender or female gender. We also have the common dual gender in Spanish, cantante, bebé, dentista. Remember that common or dual gender are those nouns having both genders in simultaneously, that is at the same time, and we are going to use them either as males or females according to context. El cantante or la cantante, for example, right? And finally, in English, in Spanish, we have the epicene gender. associated with animals or people. Epicene gender is exclusively found in the Spanish language. What happens with this epicene gender o género epiceno? Los sustantivos con epicene gender son esas personas o animales con género invariable. Y en este y al respecto, este género se usa con cualquier tipo de gente o animal de clase, sin importar su género biológico. Por ejemplo, la víctima, el personaje, la araña, el tiburón, tienen un solo género que los determina según lo asignado arbitrariamente por el diccionario, como ya hemos visto. Por ejemplo, la víctima femenino, el personaje masculino, la araña femenino, el tiburón masculino. Y a veces para distinguirlos se suele utilizar en español macho o hembra, sobre todo cuando hablamos de animales, no tanto de personas. La araña macho, el tiburón macho, la araña macho, el tiburón hembra. Incluso en inglés suele aparecer la palabra male or female. The spider, the male spider, the female spider, the male shark, the female shark. But what about epicene gender in English when in English we do not have epicene gender? What happens with the gender of victim, of spider, of shark? In English, they or these kinds of nouns always have common gender. That is victim, spider, shark, character. And this difference, this dichotomy between English or Spanish always trigger the ambiguities in Spanish. We always have ambiguous meanings, and this is important for translators to decide in favor of other gender when we do not have any kind of context to decide whether this noun has male gender or female gender. And this is what we're going to see in a while. So let's go to the board, vamos al pizarrón y vamos a ver qué pasa con este contrastive analysis and how we justify our choices according to this theory. Here we have an interesting, a beautiful example to be analyzed from the contrastive point of view. How would you translate this sentence? President Giorgia Meloni will visit Argentina next month into Spanish. How would you translate it? La presidente Giorgia Meloni visitará Argentina el mes próximo, o la presidenta Giorgia Meloni visitará Argentina el mes próximo. Which of both is the correct one? ¿La presidente o la presidenta? Ahora que está muy politizado, muy en boga este tema de si decir la presidente o la presidenta. Déjenme decirles que lo correcto y la única opción es la presidenta, female gender. Recuerden que en español el género siempre es arbitrarily given, es decir, a través de los dictionaries. Así que cuando estén en duda respecto de si un determinado sustantivo, un determinado nombre tiene género masculino o femenino, por favor miren en los diccionarios. Entonces, la única opción de traducción para esta oración sería: la presidenta Giorgia Meloni visitará Argentina el mes próximo. No pasa igual cuando tenemos adjetivos que terminan en T o en ente, y en ese caso, por ejemplo, elegante, ardiente, como la capilla ardiente, inteligente, van a tener common or dual gender. Is it clear? Okay, so let's go to analyze these following examples then. Here we have two beautiful options in example number 1, which say 1A, the new secretary is coming in the afternoon today, and 1B, Jennifer is coming in the afternoon today. She's the new secretary. We're going to analyze both sentences from the contrastive point of view regarding gender. So, the first thing to do, y aquí voy a usar el español para ser claro, lo primero que vamos a hacer en todo contrastive análisis es tener la traducción de la oración o de la frase que estamos por analizar. Entonces, vamos a escribir aquí: el nuevo secretario, pero también puede ser la nueva secretaria, viene hoy a la tarde. En el segundo ejemplo, Jennifer viene hoy a la tarde. She is the new secretary. Ella es, o directamente, es la nueva secretaria. Ok. Fíjense que the panorama is different between A and B. En primer lugar, vamos a ver, o vamos a copiar lo que vamos a analizar acá. The new secretary is, in Spanish tenemos el nuevo secretario, la nueva secretaria viene. Okay. Then mark the nouns or the adjectives or the determiners or whatever you are going to analyze. In this case, the noun secretary. Secretario, secretaria. Okay? Okay. In English, what kind of gender do we have? Common gender or dual gender. What kind of number? Singular number. But what happens in Spanish? We have two possibilities. Why? Because in the English text, we do not have any kind of reference as to decide in favor of one or the other gender. We do not have determiners, we do not have proper nouns, we do not have professions, jobs, etc. In Spanish, so we have el nuevo secretario, la nueva secretaria. Gender, male gender on the one hand, female gender on the other. So, we have ambiguity. Yes. This A means ambiguity, right? And how would you disambiguate this information, and how would you justify your choice? Well, the choice will be la nueva secretaria. Why justification? Because we are going to decide it from the cultural imagery, that is el acervo, el imaginario cultural. And why? Because because secretaries is a job generally um, generally assigned to women, right? Or something of the sort. Okay, this is one possibility to justify our choices. Cultural imagery. What happens in the second example, in 1b, where we also have secretary, but here we have, again, I'm going to I'm going to cut and paste just to make things easier here, because in English the panorama is again the same as in English. The new secretary, common gender, singular number. Okay, what about in Spanish? Es la nueva secretaria. Gender, female gender in Spanish. Why? We have ambiguity. No. Why? Justification. We are not going to include choice because we do not have ambiguous meaning in Spanish. So, what happens here? Why do we not have ambiguity in Spanish? Because gender in Spanish, gender is selected according to reference. In this case, what are the reference? The proper noun, Jennifer, and what else? And personal pronoun, she. Okay? And this is a clear contrastive analysis regarding these two examples. Secretary in both, the gender of secretary in both examples. Well, let's go to another example now. Before going on, I would like to give you another example of nouns whose gender is decided through cultural imagery when there are not enough references in the text which allow us to decide in favor of one or other gender. Think, for example, of lorry driver. How to translate lorry driver into Spanish? El camionero o la camionera. La camionera for us has a negative connotation. Besides, the correct choice is el camionero. Here we are deciding or choosing the gender in favor of the male gender, el camionero, because this is a job always, or at least in general, performed by males, el camionero. Remember that I would like to tell you something about the examples given in this presentation. These are very simple examples just to show you how to do a contrastive analysis from the gender point of view. But if you go over the reading material provided for this week, you're going to find a better explanation and some other examples concerning these kinds of ambiguities I'm showing you now, right? Examples taken from journals, from magazines, from literary books, academic examples, right? So now let's go to example number 2. Here we have a swimmer was attacked by a shark. Remember to translate the sentence into Spanish first, always. And here we have a passive construction. Remember that when we have a passive construction followed by the doer of the action, the agent complement, in this case, by a shark, we can use modulación pasiva por activa en español. So, un tiburón atacó, and here is the ambiguity. Un nadador, una nadadora. Why? Because we do not have any kinds of references in the original text as to decide in favor of male gender, un nadador, or female gender, una nadadora. No proper nouns, no determiners, no personal pronouns. So, let's go through the analysis. First of all, I'm going to write here what we're going to analyze first. A swimmer attacked. I'm going to highlight it. A swimmer. What about gender in this example? Gender, common or dual gender. Number, singular number. In Spanish, atacó un nadador, una nadadora. Again, I'm going to highlight it here. What about gender in Spanish? Gender in Spanish, male and female gender, nadador, nadadora. Number, also singular number. And here we have ambiguity. Yes. How would you choose, or what would you choose? The male or the female gender? In this case, we are going to choose un nadador, the male gender. And why? Because generic male gender always involves both genders all together. The male, male, and female. And that's it. But we also have another kind of ambiguity here. What about shark? By a shark. I'm going to. Okay. We have gender, common gender in English. Number, singular. But what about in Spanish? Ataco a un tiburón atacó. Okay, so I'm going to highlight un tiburón. What happens here? Gender, epicene, gender. Ambiguity, yes, we have ambiguity because we do not know whether this tiburón is male or female, macho or hembra, because there are no reference to it in the sentence given. So, what would you choose here? Always the un tiburón. Why? Because this is the gender arbitrarily given by dictionaries. So, how would you justify your choice in this case? We can say, even though epicene gender may refer to males and females at the same time, male gender is chosen. Is male chosen. Why? Since gender is always arbitrarily given by dictionaries. Right? Do you understand the analysis here? Let's go to example number 3 now. And this is our third example. The swimmers were rescued by the lifeguard. How would you translate this sentence into Spanish? Here we go. El socorrista, la socorrista rescató a los nadadores or a las nadadoras. As you see, we have two ambiguous constructions here. So, let's go through the contrastive analysis. First of all, let's analyze what happened with the swimmers. The swimmers were rescued. First of all, I'm going to highlight the noun to be analyzed. What about gender here? Gender, common gender or dual gender. And number, plural number. In Spanish, la socorrista rescató a los nadadores, a las nadadoras. Gender, male, female gender. Morphologically marked male or female gendered nouns. Nadador, nadadora. Do we have ambiguity in this construction? Yes. Which one of the two genders would you choose? The male one, nadadores, or the female nadadoras, when we do not have any kind of reference in the sentence which allow us, translators, to decide in favor of one or the other. No pronouns, no determiners, no proper noun. This example is quite similar to the previous one. What is the difference? Here, in this example number 3, we have swimmers, nadadores, nadadoras, plural noun. In the previous example, in example number 2, a swimmer, un nadador, una nadadora, singular, but the analysis is quite similar. So, we shall decide in this example in the same way as in the previous one, in favor of the male gendered noun, nadadores. Why? As we have already previously said, generic male gender always involves both genders, male and female genders, all together at the same time. What about the second example to be analyzed? The second ambiguous construction to be analyzed by the lifeguard, el socorrista, la socorrista, by the lifeguard. Let's highlight the noun to be analyzed first, and here we have gender, common gender, noun singular, number singular. What happens in English? El socorrista, la socorrista, rescató, etcétera, etcétera. Gender, common gender, because socorrista is a noun having both genders or denoting both genders, male and female gender, at the same time. Ambiguity, of course, yes. Which one of the two would you choose in this case? This is a clear example very similar to the one analyzed in example number 2. Remember, la secretaria, the secretary, and the lorry driver, el camionero. In this case, also, we are going to decide in favor of the male gendered noun, el socorrista. Why? Because the noun socorrista denotes or refers to a job always performed by men. That is, we decide the gender here through cultural imagery as well. Well, here we arrived at the end of our presentation, or at the end of this week's presentation. Hope everything looks clear, how you can do your own contrastive analysis regarding gender. Let's meet in the next class. Goodbye.